Cool. So, I think I mentioned this to a couple of people who are here first, kind of rolling in, just like dropping your name and or like your Instagram handle or website or anything like that in the chat, just so we can kind of like follow along and get to know each other a little bit. I won't go around and do like a formal introductions with everyone, just because it tends to take up a surprising amount of time. Hey, Meredith. And so, but yeah, we really want today to just be like a casual discussion. We've got Brian here, and I will let him introduce himself in just a second. But wanted to say hello to anybody who's new. Thanks so much to folks who are joining us again. We are doing the Clubhouse every other month. So we've got the invite set up to go through, I think, November of this year. And our goal is to bring in an awesome sort of featured speaker guest kind of to just help us guide our conversation, and ask questions and learn from each other. So I was mentioning before, but I think we're going to talk to a photographer for next time. But if there are any other sort of like disciplines or like folks that you are like, man, I would really love to pick their brain, you can certainly like feel free to send us a DM or something, and we'll reach out and try and make it happen. But I'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk about business development, and we've got Brian from Simple Thread. I honestly can't remember, Brian, how we became friends, like when we originally met, like just maybe through Lighthouse Labs or something?
Probably. I think we became friends because I am a Campfire fanboy, and I like just followed you all on Instagram for years, and was just really impressed with all your work. And I went to the what was the conference you all did, the like Spark, what was it called?
Burn Both Ends.
Burn Both Ends, thank you. I went to Burn Both Ends and was just floored by all the quality people that were there, and said, okay, I'm hooked. Whatever they're doing. I'm in.
Sweet. Well, we have also been fangirls of you and Simple Thread, and like honestly watching your growth and like how much you've supported that company's growth over the past couple of years has been super impressive. And even just like have conversations with you and sort of watch you in other sort of professional spaces. My role at Campfire, I'm one of the partners here. We have a couple of Campfire folks in the room here. Lauren's here, just back from maternity leave, and then we've got Chelsea and Baishan here too with us. But my role is more in business development these days, and it's something that I feel like I'm kind of teaching myself, and it's tough, especially I think a lot of you guys who are in sort of like small design business roles, we all kind of have to take on some of that in a manner that like we don't always have like a tiered layers of mentorship above us in our companies. So we're kind of trying to figure it out. And so I kind of, when I was thinking about it, I was like, Brian is a person that I've always been very impressed with, like sort of your natural ability to do this. So I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then I've got some questions, and then we can, if you guys have questions too, we can feel free to just, raise your hand or shout it out or drop it in the chat, whatever works.
Awesome. I think I am in two main reasons. Number one, I was a horrible failed designer. I went to James Madison. I studied in the School of Media Arts and Design, and I looked around in the classroom at people who were there with me, and I was like, wow, these are superiorly talented people, and I am not one of these people. But I liked kind of the idea of graphics. I would make things or illustrate things, but I was not good at it. And that kind of took me in a different direction that was a little bit more technical. Ended up after school as a software engineer, systems engineer, working with a consultancy, and realized I was not equipped for that. That was too detail oriented. And I was like, okay, I like this kind of design element. I like this, tech element. How do I combine those things? And so that led me more towards sales and business development. I said, okay, if I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to have to be an engineer for 15 years, or make websites for 15 years before I get to kind of be the person on the whiteboard talking. But if I'm a salesperson today, I can get straight on the whiteboard and talk to customers about their problems and all that sort of thing. So, so for me, the simple plan was, okay, I can stay in this field and, work more in a sales capacity. So that led me there. Over the course of, I'm 46, so 20 plus years, I've worked at a variety of software and consulting firms, most notably IBM for many years. But it was really hard. I kind of am a small business person, so I chafed at a lot of the structure that was there. So had an opportunity, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago to start working with some smaller businesses. That led me to Simple Thread, and I think our joint kind of friend is Spencer Hansen, who is our kind of head of design at Simple Thread. He had a firm, teammate, and he also is like a super minority partner of Triple Stamp Press here in Richmond. But anyway, yeah. So at Simple Thread, we're a software development agency. Product agency is what we call ourselves. So we are both the software developers of products. Someone who has an idea, whether it's a startup or whether it's a big business, they want to build an application. But as part of that software development engineering, design is a huge element of what we do, and a lot of the early work that we do. So I really get to combine those disciplines that I failed out at early in my career in school and in technology, to work with both designers and engineers on a daily basis, and with people who are passionate about bringing a new product to market, whether it's in the financial space or in education or healthcare or biotech or utilities. Like we work with Dominion extensively. So it's a lot of fun. Every day is very different. But I'm really the only person at the business who goes out and tries to find work. So we can talk more about that.
Gotcha. Can you tell me a little bit? I know that you guys have experienced a lot of growth over like the last few years. Can you just like tell everybody else here a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I joined the team, I knew the owners, Justin Etheridge and Al Tenenfeld, and they are excellent engineers in their own right. But we were at about 7 employees when I joined 4 years ago, which was, a good small team, but they did want to grow the business. And so going into COVID, we had grown a little bit, maybe we're 12 by that point. Now I think I just saw an announcement yesterday. We have 2 more people joining us. We're going to be like 32 people starting in a couple weeks.
That's huge.
Yeah, so it's huge. The business has grown massively. I used to try and keep up with every project that we were working on. It's hard to do that these days.
Yeah.
But a real big kind of spur of growth has been finding a large client that is a great partner in Dominion. We do a bunch of work with them, and they have lots of needs where they need help kind of building new things, but also, just through business development activities and finding other clients, and seeing where those lead. So those are, startup related or kind of small, medium businesses, or in some cases, big businesses that we're working with. So it's a lot of competing interests of me trying to find work, but then also making sure we're not growing too fast with the team. And because at the same time, if we grow too fast, which is, I would say we grew pretty fast over the last couple of years, the wheels can start to come off. But a big thing for us is we have always been a remote company. So for us, we were remote prior to the pandemic. For us, not a lot has changed. More than anything, it's like we can't get in the room for that initial kind of brainstorming session, or initial few brainstorming sessions. But for us, it's been pretty standard operation. It was actually weird in that we had our company come together maybe a month or 2 ago, and most people in the business had never met each other. It was like the first time they had ever met other people in the business. So we're getting back to a little bit more, okay, we're going to meet quarterly or that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of all over the place. We're all over the place.
That's awesome. I mean, as a team of 6, we have some growth goals, and watching, a team go from 7 to 32 in a couple of years is just like hugely impressive. So we've tossed around this term like business development. And I think, depending on your background and your career and what kind of companies you've worked at, like, I think that term means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What do you consider to be like business development?
Yeah, I mean, I think business development can be anything in my definition. I don't know if this is a classic textbook definition, but it's anything that can be ultimately revenue generative for the business. So it could be more projects, right? That's a very typical way in which I think about it. Another account, another project from an account we're already working with. But it also could be other things. Like one of the things that I've challenged our team on is, hey, we work with some startups. Maybe there's opportunity where we don't take our full fare on this, but maybe we take a little bit of like a slice of equity in this business. And then, this might not pay off ever. There's a high likelihood that these are going to be as 0% outcomes. But after 5, 6, 8, 10 years, we might get a massive return on a kind of small investment in some of these things. So I see that as business development activities. Anything maybe coming up with product lines, something that we're mostly a services business, so it's time and materials. We did this many hours of work, and therefore we get this many dollars because of the hours. But it could be, hey, we ourselves have built a tool to make our lives easier. Hey, maybe this is something we could sell to other agencies, or we could sell to other firms, or something like that, or it's a consumer tool. There's no end of the ways in which those could be revenue generative. So that's like a really broad picture. But then in terms of like, what does that look like? It's sales activities, but I also think a lot of it is partner activities, going out and meeting with folks, just being in the community, even like volunteering your time, like community activity and kind of work to, the benefit of your city, your town, or region. That work can be business development activities. There's lots of ways that business development can play out where yes, ultimately you're hoping to get to land more clients or make more dollars, but sometimes those have to be indirect activities that are going to get you to the dollars you're trying to bring into your business.
Totally. I've been like using the term a lot lately, like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like honestly, just like remind myself, that like this is something where you're just kind of like, you're just planting little seeds along the way. And then like you're hoping that ultimately like you're going to sort of cultivate this like really thriving garden of like relationships and, potential projects and stuff. But like it is sometimes really hard to see the big picture or sort of like the long picture, when you're just sort of like, okay, I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to host this. I don't know. It can sometimes feel like, how do I even track if I'm any good at this?
It is hard. And I think one of the things that I always encourage is, and it is good to do all those things. And I do think business development is a little different from marketing. I think that's something you were thinking about, or kind of, I mean, we can talk a little bit about that. But in terms of, yes, like you are right. It is absolutely a marathon and not a sprint. You don't know necessarily where those activities are going to yield kind of returns. But it is good when those returns do yield, to track it. Like, oh yeah, I talked to this person who was a friend, and I just was kind of at the top of their brain when they talked to somebody else, and that other person, they said to that other person, you should really call Simple Thread, or you should really call Campfire, because they could help you with that. And I think that has a massive impact. And so like when I started 4 years ago, some of my first questions were like, okay, like let's do a big, SWOT analysis and come up with some goals, and, what are we trying to do? And what do we want people in the Richmond and Charlottesville and, Virginia area to think of us when they think of Simple Thread? And we did some of those activities, but I also had to say like, okay, like how often are you having coffee with people? How often are you getting lunch? And to the founders, they were like, never. And I was like, okay, well, business development can be going and having lunch, even with friends, that who are maybe they're in IT, or maybe they're at a startup, or maybe they're at a big business or something like that can be a business development activity. And we're not sure, yes, where it's going to lead, but I guarantee if we just do some of those things, or we hang out in a coffee shop with our laptop, like, we're going to see people we know, and that's going to create opportunities for conversations, and that will kind of indirectly then lead to things. So business development can, yes, we want to boil the ocean, we want to do all the things, we want to, whatever, conquer the top of the mountain, but it also can be just, very concentrically smaller things, putting yourself kind of in a larger pool, or a pond than you're already in. And that can hopefully over time, and you have to have a bit of a strategy there, but that can lead you to where you're trying to go.
That I think that's a really, really good sort of, I don't know, just like overview of business development, and kind of like why it's important, and sort of the different levels. I have a bunch of questions, but I would love to just like allow anybody here, if any like initial questions are like popping up for you guys, anything that you specifically want to ask about. I just want to give everybody space to do that. You're welcome to just like unmute yourself and say it, or drop it in the chat. Or I'll just keep asking questions. And this will just be my personal mentor meeting with Brian.
No, they've all figured out business development. It's fine. They don't have it. I'm sure they don't have any questions.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you differentiate business development from marketing? You said you feel like maybe those are a little bit different. How do you see those as different?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when I think about marketing, and again, please, I'm not writing textbooks or anything, but when I think of marketing, I'm thinking of more like structured communications, and like casting wide nets. So that could be, whether it's newsletters, or blog posts, or download this white paper about this topic that might be interesting to a prospective customer, or press, or PR, or any of those kind of things. Like, that's kind of more what I think about when I think about marketing. Like, as you're trying to broadcast your message a little bit more, and you're not sure who it's going to go to. I mean, this could even be what we're doing right now. This could be clearly a marketing activity. But I think this activity also has the personal dynamic too, where we're interacting back and forth, and so that's more what I think about when I think about business development. I think about relationships. I think about strategic partnerships. So like, as a for instance, right? We do a lot of work in building software products. So for us, strong and smart strategic partnerships are going to be with companies who they're doing something it's called more managed services. So like, they come in and it's like, okay, we're going to give you licenses to Office 365, and like, here's a SharePoint, document store where you can put your documents, but it's very hands off. It's like, we pay you for this service, and we're just kind of making sure, your computers don't blow up, but and that you have the access to the documents and the things you need. But it's not a very high touch. We're talking every day. We're talking about this feature of the product and that feature. That's more what we do. So for us, it's been really helpful to partner with managed services companies, because they don't do any of the stuff we do. Whereas like, so I'm thinking about, right, in the case of like Campfire, who does like branding, and identity work, and then obviously physical spaces. So for someone like Campfire, a strategic partnership is like having an architecture firm that you work with, or have a strong relationship with, and so they know they're going to come up with the idea, and then they're going to have this physical space, and they need someone to kind of help bring that to life, create some more of the lived-in elements of that space, right? Campfire could be great for that. Or they work with a copy editor, who they're helping someone write the copy for their website, but they don't necessarily know how to do the logo, or branding, or marks, or things like that, or fonts, or all that sort of thing. So like, having those places where it's like, we are kind of aligned, but we don't necessarily work together. I think that sort of thing is a real key element of business development, where you're trying to create relationships, but you're also trying to create kind of like win-win-win relationships, ultimately for the client. But then, right, when it comes to you and maybe just going out and talking to people, that's kind of more like salesy business development activities. Does that help answer the question? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's great. So I was sort of curious, you know, we talked a little bit about this, about sort of creating, that it can be hard to kind of like track this sort of beast of like building relationships, right? It's not always linear. And it's like, I mean, I've literally tried so many different methods of like, okay, do I use an Asana board? Am I using a spreadsheet? Do I just have like a Google Doc? Like so many different ways. Do you have any like advice on kind of getting started? Like, how do you even say like, okay, I want to be more intentional about my relationship building. Where do I even begin?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we have this discussion on our team, and I mean, I'm a big believer in like a CRM system, and that's really helpful for me. I use one called Copper. It ties very closely with Google, like if you have like Gmail and stuff like that, you like as your company, it ties pretty closely. I like that. Other ones are like Pipedrive, HubSpot, you know, there's a million of them. And they're all wonderful. I think, you know, but there's probably one that works well for people. But I have conversations with my bosses because they're like, you know, like I just want this thing where I can like kind of go through every couple months and, you know, I have 30 minutes and I just, you know, I don't know what to do and where do I go and who do I contact, and I want to send out an email or reach out to somebody to get a coffee. You know, I need like a spreadsheet or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's called a CRM system. But like he refuses to use a CRM system. So I'm like, okay, well then just what do you like? Like, what do you want to build it in? And he wants to build it in a spreadsheet. And I'm like, okay, you're building a CRM system into your spreadsheet. Just know that you're doing that, and that's fine. But you know, it's a way that kind of works for him, but doesn't necessarily work for me. So in a small business, there's a little bit more grace. You know, if you were in a big business and you're really trying to orchestrate across a lot of different people, having a kind of single version of truth is very valuable. But, you know, yes, to answer your question, I would say go to a place that makes sense to you and works for you, and you will find yourself held accountable to. And then, but then, right, also, like if there's somebody else who can help hold you accountable to those things. I mean, we use, you know, Trello boards for, you know, some kind of like leadership things that we're working on. We use CRM just to kind of track deal flow, or at least I do. But then we also use spreadsheets to like, hey, what projects are everybody working on? So we can see, okay, this person's working on this person's working on this. They're going to have availability in 2 months. So we could, you know, cycle them onto a different project. And that works for kind of the larger leadership team. So I would encourage you to just to do things that you like and are, you know, enjoy. Like I'm just gonna embarrass myself here. Like this is like a stack of Post-it notes that I have on my desk that I took them all down because I need to rewrite some and throw some away. But if you're not familiar with like a Kanban board, I love Kanban boards. So it's the framework is like to do, doing, done, right? And so like a Trello, it's like a Trello board, right? So you can keep things as structured as like, this is something I need to do, this is something I'm actively working on, and this is something that I've done and I can effectively, you know, ignore. But surfacing that work, I kind of have a Kanban board on the wall behind me that I keep, but then we have like a real Trello board that we use for work. But yeah, it's kind of a non-answer, but I would say like, do it in places that are going to be less onerous and less painful for you to try and use those things. Then like you have to install and you have to use and you're not used to using. If you're already using Notion, great, put it in Notion. If you're already using Trello, great, put it in Trello. If you're already, using spreadsheets, just add another spreadsheet and put a bookmark on it. I would say do what works for you until it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we've got 5 people and we're all trying to talk about this. How do we do this together?
Yeah, for sure. We started, I find that like I ebb and flow with wanting to put a ton of information into my like big picture business development ideas in terms of like, I want a list of every single architect I want to talk to. I want a list of every brand strategist. I want a list of every like vendor. And then after a couple of weeks, I look at it again and I'm like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. Like I couldn't possibly meet with all these people, right? So I go back and forth with like needing to write it all down. But then what I realized recently, and I think I borrowed this from a colleague in Richmond that was posting about just kind of like simplifying your goals and like how that just like allows you to be a little bit more ready to like emotionally achieve them basically. And so I've tried to simplify it and say like, okay, in the next quarter, I want to try and send 5 emails. Like I give myself like really, really simple, like low kind of like threshold goals. And then I'm like, my goal isn't to get in a meeting. My goal is that I just attempt the communication, right? Yeah. And that makes me feel like, okay, I've reached my goal because I did send 5 emails. Only 2 people replied. And, I actually went somewhere, but I at least am getting a little bit more comfortable with like, I don't know, kind of putting myself out there, I guess.
No, I love that. And I actually was listening to someone, their podcast recently, and they were talking about the concept of like eating like a lion, not a cow, right? Like cows are always out there, graze, like all day, every day. That's all they do. Whereas like lions are obviously a little bit more, they're laying in the sun, they're laying on the rocks, and then every once a week or something, they're going out and making a big thing that they can consume. So like, I think that that's a great approach that you're trying to take, is say, hey, I'm trying to set the goals small, and I'm trying to like, make sure that I'm knocking off the things that are the most important when I can. If I, maybe start my day and I send that email, I think that's really valuable. And then if it's a miss, it's a miss, right? Okay, that's fine. But when you are going out to eat, quote unquote, like you're making a big effort at it. And I think like that kind of ties into like, how do you reach out to people that maybe you don't know so well? The more research I find, the more research I can do in advance, before I just start spamming 1,000 people, 1,000 architects or whatever, right? Like if I can know a little bit more about their work, hey, I really loved the building that you built at XYZ location, I've watched it go up, and, just so really delight in kind of what you built there. If you can start to tie in some elements of, your own knowledge of what they do, and write that in rather than just, copy, paste, like you're probably more likely to get a first conversation with that person. And it's going to mean more if you do have that conversation than like, what was this thing that was in my email? And like, who are you again? Like, they're going to probably respond. If they respond, they're going to respond with more enthusiasm because you kind of took a little bit more time in doing that.
Totally. I like we did, we kind of had this like push for connecting with architects in the Hampton Roads region specifically, because that's a goal of ours, is to like do more interiors work in that area. And I was kind of thinking about like, what are the emails that I reply to? And it's exactly what you say. It's like someone who's like mentioned something specific to me. They like know my name. They're emailing me directly. And that they've like, hey, I love this thing that you did. Or, they just like throw some flattery out there. And I'm like, yes, I will totally meet with you after you like send me a bunch of compliments, right? Like that always feels nice. Even if they don't reply, at least I'm like, well, at least they know that we like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like, there was intention and thought in what they did. And so I'm much more likely, and I mean, I've had that where people will get at, will reach out to me. I don't really know them. They're trying to find a job, and this works for, work projects, and this works for people who are looking for mentoring. Like they've, done research on me. They're asking smart questions. Like this is a person who just needs that, that one break. And, I don't know, maybe I can, maybe I can't, but at the least, I'll certainly be, mindful of this person. I want to help them. So yeah, I think you're exactly right in that it means more to me when I get it. So why wouldn't it, obviously reflexively work the same way for somebody else?
Yeah, totally.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about how business development is sort of this long game, and there's all these sort of different ways to connect with people and follow up with them and ultimately like turn into a lead. Maybe you could talk through the phases of business development. So you talked about your Kanban board, and we use Asana. There's a million different tools to use, but sort of what that general process is that you're taking people through.
That's an excellent question. I love that. I'm actually logging into my Copper account so I can steal and make sure I'm doing what I actually do. The one thing I will say is, for everybody, it should probably be a little bit different, but there are going to be a lot of the same elements. And again, just like I was saying before, like, use a tool that's going to work for you, or you're excited to use or familiar with using. I think the same is true also for kind of the phases of kind of business development. And I've found that in working at Simple Thread for 4 years, like, I thought I knew what the process was, and then I started talking to other people in the business, and they said, like, I think that's not the right next step. It's really, or phase, like, it's really this. And I was like, okay, great. I think that's great. I would never thought of that, but yes, let's do that. So for me, what I do is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different phases. And so the first one is, well, actually, I want to talk a little bit first about something that I strongly believe. A lot of times in sales, you'll hear the concept of like the sales funnel, right? So you have everybody's at the top, and then over time, it kind of filters down, and then you get that only small group of people that actually will sign a contract and give you $1. And so, so the funnel goes to that smaller point, and then, kind of on the other side of the funnel, those clients, the longer the stronger the relationship you have, the more they actually deliver over time. That can be the case. That's not always the case based on whatever your business is or how your business works. But that's the classic way to think about it. I like to think about things more of like an orbit, right? So you have a planet, and then it's not a constant orbit. It's like things can kind of come close and maybe bump up against planet Earth, and then they kind of fly back out again. And that's much more the like modern like software as a subscription or Netflix model, that like somebody might become a Netflix customer for a period of time, and then they watch what is it, Emily in Paris, or my favorite show, The Last Kingdom, right? They just crunch it all through, and then they quit their subscription, and then it's going to be another year until that show's back, and then I'll kind of cycle back in. So I like to think about it as this kind of decaying and expanding orbit with clients, more than just the classic funnel. The funnel's fine, but this is another way to think about things, kind of more modern way. So the first phase that I think about, and I'll try and find there's a blog post, or I could post it later, that kind of talks about that. But so identified. So there's something out there, either they've identified us or I've identified them. I think they're going to be a good prospect for our business, or they have, filled out a contact us form on our website. It could be as simple as that. Or I know of a friend who said, hey, I want to put you in touch with this person, that sort of thing. Like, I would classify that like very early stage as identified. The next step for me is qualified. And so, okay, there's something here, there's a budget behind this, there's a project of some kind, there's intent or interest. So it's not just somebody who, has reached out to us, but, I know a little bit more about it. And, your mileage might vary on what qualified means, but I kind of think, okay, they have a real project, they're trying to accomplish a real thing. There's some budget, even if I don't know what that budget is, they have said, yes, that they do have a budget for this thing. So that's kind of the next phase. And then for us, the next phase is like proposal ode. So we've done enough qualification to understand what the need is, to understand what the budget is, to understand, the time frame. Does the time frame match up for us? And then that would kind of be in the proposal ode. So I'm going to send them, as part of our business, we send a pretty lengthy proposal that says, okay, this is our process. This is how we do things. Here are some of our clients. And here's what we're going to do for you over a period of a discovery period. That's kind of our first date kind of project, where it's like, we're going to ask you lots of questions and we're going to give you some mock-ups or, design ideas of what we're going to build for you. So anyway, so that would go into the proposal. So I owe them the proposal. That's the first part. So that keeps me, okay, I need to do this. I need to make sure this gets done. And then I send the proposal. So that's the next phase, because that can sometimes take a couple of weeks for us, because I've got to orchestrate with other people in the business, ask them questions. Hey, what is this going to cost us to do? How much time is this going to take for us to do this thing? So then I send it out to them. That's a big drop-off point for us once we have sent out that proposal. But like, once we get past that proposal, like if somebody replies back and says like, yes, I'm interested, it's basically like either they say, no, thanks, I'm not interested, and they're out. Or if they say, okay, we're still interested, it's a very straight line between that point and like we actually sign a contract with them. So then the next step for us is contract sent. There are kind of classic, and contract sent is like, okay, we're waiting on them to go through their procurement process, or get the approvals, or get the budget locked up, or whatever for this thing, and go through the terms and conditions of our statements of work or master services agreement, and so it's just kind of driving that process. That's our process, but other people have different processes, but it's always some variation of like, you've identified a thing, you've qualified a thing, you started to run them through your kind of expertise and explanation on what you're going to do for them, to get them to a point where they're going to sign a contract. Is that helpful? Does anybody have I'm curious if people have different processes.
I think maybe the only thing. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to kind of add is, mine's pretty much identical to yours. But sort of, how do you handle the not right nows? Obviously, you're in front of a ton of people, and focusing on, like you said, like qualifying them. And if you get the idea of like, there's something there, but not right now, like what does that process look like for you?
That's a great question. And that's something that I have not ever taken. It's like Sandler's sales training. But I have a friend who raves about Sandler and their process. And I'm actually like, I thought like, I'll never take any sales. I've been through enough training of like sales training at IBM and other businesses. Like, I don't need to take any more training. But this person really challenged that like in the last 2 weeks. So I'm looking into that. But one of the things that they talk about is my understanding. So this is like very third hand. So apologize if I'm butchering the Sandler sales process, but they're a big believer in like, your time is valuable too. So if you like, so closing it out, like, hey, let's say you sent the proposal a week ago, or they said not right now, and you say, okay, that's fine. Understood. Like, rather than like what I tend to do, I think one of the things that I maybe wrongly do is like, okay, like no problem. Like, I'll just be back in touch, and like, I'll just check back in, like, no big deal. Like, tell me when, like I will do that. And maybe I'm becoming more of a nuisance than like saying, okay, like I've given you the information, my time's valuable. If you have more questions, like you can let me know again down the road. Like, and kind of closing it out and being a little bit more definitive about it. Like my process is I tend to say, understood, got it. I will follow up with you in a month or 3 months or, whatever, just to check back and make sure, nothing's changed. Whereas I think the Sandler method would say, close it out, and let them be on their way and let you be on your way. And don't like spend time and mental energy kind of like, let's say mental drag on thinking about that or hoping that the thing's going to come in. Like, just move on, and be done from that. And so, but at the same time, right, if they're a potential client at some point, you want to figure out ways in which you could re-engage. So I don't know that kind of just closing it out definitively and being done. The one thing I will say about that, the more I thought about it, is I'm sure other people have this experience over time. And, inflation is a great example of this. What you need to get paid today might be very different than what you needed to get paid 2 years ago. And so if they have this proposal from a year, 2 years ago or whatever, and they're like, hey, this is still the price, right? And you're like, oh, fine, okay. Like, that's a chance. If you had closed it out, it's a chance for you to either restate the new proposal with the new rates, or a chance for you to, if you, or you have to basically take the step and say, hey, listen, that proposal's 2 years old, it's stale. This would be the new rate for that same work. Cachet writes, we close out by noting an expiration date on our proposals. Perfect. Yeah, I do that too. I just still get the question, the rate's still the same, right? and then I either need to go beg to my bosses to use the old rate or not. But yes, I do think that expiry is a great thing, because it forces them to make a decision, and then it doesn't hold you to that rate long term, and you can point to it and say, I know you're asking me this, but that is past. Like, we have new rates for 2022 or whatever. We can't honor that. I'm sorry.
What we've tried to do, I actually literally have a meeting on Monday with a client that I wrote a proposal for, I think 1.5 years ago. And it's funny how stuff like that does circle back around a lot of times, especially I would say there's probably 20 to 30% of the proposals we write where clients don't actually end up doing the project. It's not like they didn't hire us because they hired someone else. They just stuff got busy. They, especially when taking on branding and website stuff, it's you have to have internal time basically to work on stuff like that. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, we got too busy with other things and we're going to table that project. Anywho, I have a meeting on Monday, and I'll say one of the things that we sometimes will do, in addition, we definitely have an expiration date on our proposals of 30 days. But I will also if clients are well, we really kind of got, emotionally connected to this number, we'll remove scope, to say if clients really that's kind of what we really try to do. If people want to argue about, or they want to negotiate fees, is we'll say we could maybe hit that fee, but it means that you get less things from the project. Obviously we have a floor, there's a minimum of what we provide, but that sometimes is helpful to let people be okay, we can negotiate, and then they'll be oh, actually we really need those things, and it's okay, well, we'll adjust the fee.
Right. Yeah, now it bumps up.
Yeah, but that's a really, really helpful thought process, and even suggestion about trying to move on from clients that say no thanks or not right now, because I think sometimes we do get a little emotionally connected to some of those, and we're kind of oh, we just really hope they're going to come back and do that, and we'll wait for months and months and months, and I mean, I will sort of be connected to the idea that stuff might come back around, but it does require extra capacity within your tracking and your brain and everything to keep that on your radar.
Yeah. And I'm a hoarder as a salesperson. I'm a sales hoarder, right? I want all those old things that I can go back to, or if I don't know what to do, I could reach out to this person and see what's up.
Yes, totally.
So there is this kind of sales hoarding mentality that I kind of would happily defend, but at the same time, right, there's also this sense of I think there has to be some way in which you can say that project is not going to save us. That project is not going to be there for us when we need it. I need to count on other things or be taking other action so that I don't think I can just snap my fingers and make that one kind of, come to life. Maybe you get lucky, but right. There is, I will say that time element, if you can really be working with people, especially when the pain is really acute for them, it is so easy to sell, just by being very responsive to somebody that goes on your website and types in the form. If you can respond to that in a couple hours, I often get wow, I can't believe you replied this quick, right? And it's if you can kind of continue to learn more about the pain and what they're trying to accomplish, that's going to help you. But right, over time it dulls, or right, there are other ways to solve it, or that budget gets spoken for in some other capacity for some other project.
That's really, really good advice, I think, because we rely, I always feel like we do best, like clients are ready to hire us the most, like right at the end of that inquiry meeting, where they get a chance to talk to us. We get a chance to sort of sell our process, like talk about our value. They get to meet us and be like, oh, I like talking to this person. And they're like ready to like, they're like, okay, I can't wait to work with you. And then if it takes me longer than a week to write a proposal, then that sort of excitement is died down. If it takes them a long time to like work through it internally, like it definitely, the excitement kind of like wanes. And you're totally right. I definitely struggle, or I kind of go back and forth with the idea of like, how quickly do I respond to this email? Because sometimes I feel like if I'm too eager, people think we don't have enough work or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when you're in your 20s and you're at the bar and you're like, I don't want to seem too interested, but I also don't want to seem like wholly unavailable, right? It's that 100%. Like, cool indifference that you're kind of going for. But yes, I do think Johnny on the spot is like a good place to be, where you're not, it's not 10 seconds after the email came in, but it's, certainly within a shorter window, if you can reply to that, that tends to work well. But yes, but like that, and that's all, like, it's great when things are kind of inbound, but like, I mean, I don't know how it works for everybody else, but that is not even close to a majority of our business, right? That's like very, very rare that like stuff comes to us that we didn't, solicit, or, just comes off the website. It's like the ways that really work for us to find new projects and like great, enduring long projects are like, someone has recommended us. I've worked with somebody over a period of time. We've gotten to know each other well from working together on, kind of nonprofit work, or, whatever it is. And then they say like, hey, this is a competent person. This is not a total loon. Like, they kind of know what they're doing. I could probably ask them some business advice, or I can ask them about this project, or refer them out to somebody else. I mean, most of the work we get through is kind of through our, sleeper network of people that are out and around, and they need help on a thing, or they know of us from somebody else, or they asked for a recommendation and we were recommended. But again, like, yes, maybe they go to the website and fill out the form, and then it's like, oh,
right. But they didn't just like land on the website because they Googled something.
Right. Yeah. That's probably the lowest likely conversion kind of thing.
Yeah. Us too. So we have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to talk to you guys about something that we're working on, but before I do that, I just wanted to see if anybody else had any other questions for Brian.
I have a quick question. In terms of business development with networking with not necessarily people that are going to become potential clients, but just people who might have referrals for you, or, good connections. I think something that I struggle with in my Asana board with business development is making it feel human, in terms of how often do I reach out? How often do I send an email? I don't want it to seem like, oh, every 3 months I'm getting an email from Jada, so I guess I just wonder if you have any tips on keeping things human, or a specific amount of time that you would suggest, asking somebody to get coffee that you used to work with, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like any relationship, there's kind of typical ebbs and flows, and, like there's certain frequencies on which you see people, your closest, nearest and dearest. Like, it's less of an inconvenience to be meeting with them regularly, right? But if it's much more of a, I don't really know this person very well, or, I distantly know them, then right, I think, 3 to 6 months is a good time frame to be checking in with people, or asking them what's going on, or, hey, can you grab coffee, or that sort of thing. I think that's always good. But I always think it's the opportunities to, like, when you get to know people more, then those opportunities lead to more opportunities to, like, hey, let me get your advice about this, or let me ask you about that, or, what do you think about this project we have in mind, or like, hey, I'm thinking about, going off in this direction, right? Like the more, just like any relationship, the more trust that's built, the more likely it is that you can kind of, tighten that circle a little bit. But yeah, initially, I think, if it's someone you really don't know at all, like I've had plenty of coffees with people that I've never had a second coffee with because they're not interested, or I'm like, oh, that's not really a fit, or, just there was nothing kind of there from a work perspective beyond that. But yes, finding people that think similarly and there's some sort of, alignment around the way you look at the world, I think you can start to close that circle in a little bit more. But yeah, in terms of like, how do you not make it feel robotic? I really think that just comes down to the way in which you're reaching out to them. Whether, I don't know, whatever the media is, like, if I can get to text with a person, I tend to try and go to text, once I have an established rapport with them, because emails, I mean, I don't know what your inbox is like, but mine's a disaster. So text is going to be more likely to pop up on somebody's, screen, even if it's every 3 months. And, I have a close friend that, like, we've been trying to get coffee for 2 months now, and we can't get it together. We just can't get it together for this reason or that reason. But yeah, I think as long as you're not making it feel like, hello, human, right?
Right.
Like, how are you doing? Like, as long as it's, hey, hope you're enjoying the wonderful summer weather, blah, 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 that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually wanted to run by you guys something that the Campfire team has been working on for a couple, I guess, months at this point. So I wanted to sort of share my screen and show you guys something. Basically, we have been thinking about how we can basically give back to our audience of designers. We have a fair amount of followers, like on Instagram and other platforms, that are people we want to work with and for, but we also just have collected and created a little bit more of a community of other designers. And one of the things that I feel like Campfire is really, like, sort of strategically good at is our process. We've worked really, really hard to hone a process that I think really helps build a referral base of past clients. So I wanted to introduce kind of this workshop series. So we are going to be doing in September a 4-part workshop series specifically geared at designers and graphic designers specifically. So this workshop will be maybe kind of approachable to all types of designers, but really kind of what we're thinking about is graphic design. Just kind of helps us to hone in on one specific design. But the idea here is to design a process that when clients walk away from it, they want to, like, shout your name from the rooftops and be like, this is the best, client, or the best person I've ever worked with. Great design is always a thing that people will be excited about, but what people will really tell other people about is the process and the experience of working with you. So we are going to do a 4-part series where we will talk about planning for an amazing experience, designing and refining a process that embodies your values. We will talk about how to respond to inquiries, how to onboard clients, how to get started before you start designing. Then we will talk about what the design process actually can look like and how to make it, really tidy and repeatable. And then we are also going to talk about some other just sort of like bonus things that we've learned along the ways in terms of project management, software, promotion, et cetera. But really the idea here is to create a really organized, repeatable process so that every client gets something super cohesive and consistent. And then you can really focus on the fun part of it, which is like the design and the creativity and the innovation. And you don't have to think about and reinvent the wheel every single time you're working with a new client. So we're going to be running this in September. There's a bunch more information on this page that we are hopefully launching here soon. So I won't go through every detail there, but you guys are the first ones I wanted to sort of talk about it with. And we'll hopefully be sharing it on social and in our newsletter and stuff, probably in early June, and launch sort of ticket sales. It'll be sort of like a ticket event. We'll meet every Friday for 4 Fridays in September. It'll be sort of a live virtual event like this. And folks will have access to like recordings as well as like some templates and sort of other deliverables that we'll do during the process. So yeah, just wanted a chance to introduce that. And if you guys have any questions or thoughts or input, we would love to capture that.
That's so exciting. I'll definitely be there.
Okay, great.
I do have a quick question or thought, I guess, for you all with the workshop series. So I've taken a couple of courses from other designers that cover some similar things. And so there's parts of the process that I totally understand, making repeatable and automizing, or, and that part. But something that I struggle with is with our packages or with what we offer and that initial step of, making your map. Really deciding on, either a niche with in terms of packaging. Like, is it a, less expensive website that's one page and simple and it's just, Google fonts and, a basic color palette, or is it like a full brand design experience? So I'm just wondering if something that you all might include in that
that's
section
great
of the workshop could talk
about. I
about.
love that question. And we definitely, that's a really good point. We do, I think our agenda or sort of like outline for the workshops, we do have one in there where we will talk a little bit about packages. But I think getting into that audience piece a little bit will help with that. And we can certainly in that conversation talk more in depth about like how we've approached that, how we've like kind of designed and redesigned our design packages, I don't know, probably like 10 different times. And we finally gotten to a place where I think we feel pretty comfortable, but there is always some customization that goes with that. And so I think that we could definitely talk more in depth about that. But thank you so much for sharing that sort of struggle, because that certainly helps us kind of hone in on exactly what we'll talk about in those workshops.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we're hitting right around 1 o'clock. So just in the interest of like, being conscious of everybody's time, just want to say thank you guys so much. And thank you, Brian, so much for being here. This was so helpful. And I really appreciate it.
I had a lot of fun doing this. And I think the biggest thing is like, just take small steps. Don't try and boil the ocean, go out, ask lots of questions, right? It's always easier to get other people talking. And then, listen. And then like, once you understand more about what their goals are, like that'll help you figure out how you can support them, or work together with them. So just be curious and you'll be fine.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Hopefully we'll see you at the next Clubhouse in July, and we'll put a copy of this up on YouTube in case there's some nuggets here that you want to come back to or share with a friend.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.